friends, nice to meet you again. Hope you are always happy, healthy, and successful. Well, on this occasion now we discuss again the most influential world leaders. Don't take long to watch, enjoy watching.
This is the story of Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, born October 7, 1952, is a Russian politician, and is the current president of Russia. He is the president with the second longest term in Europe after Alexander Lukashenko, who is president of Belarus. Putin has been president of Russia since May 7, 2012. Putin was previously prime minister from 1999 to 2000, president from 2000 to 2008, and again prime minister from 2008 to 2012. During his second term as prime minister, he became chairman of the United Russia Party, a government party. Putin studied German at St. Petersburg 281 High School, and can speak German. Putin studied law at St. Petersburg State University in 1970, and graduated in 1975. Putin served as the KGB's foreign intelligence officer for 16 years, rising to the rank of lieutenant colonel before retiring in 1991 to enter politics in his hometown of St. Petersburg. He moved to Moscow in 1996 and joined the government of President Boris Yeltsin, quickly grabbing various posts and becoming acting officer on December 31, 1999, when Yeltsin stepped down. Putin won the 2000 presidential election with 52% to 30% of the vote, beating his opponent from the Communist Party, Gennady Zhuganov. He was re-elected president in 2004 with 72% of the vote. Due to constitutionally mandated term limits, Putin did not run for a consecutive presidential term in 2008. The 2008 presidential election was won by Dmitry Medvedev, who installed Putin as prime minister, judging a period he called tandemocracy. In September 2011, after a presidential term of 4 to 6 years, Putin announced that he would be ready for his term as president. He won the March 2012 presidential election with 64% of the vote, a result that matched pre-election polls. During Putin's first presidential term, the Russian economy grew for 8 years, and GDP as measured in spending power increased 72%. This growth was a result of the 2000s commodity booming, rising oil prices, and the issuance of economic and fiscal policies. The economy began to experience difficulties with the arrival of the 2008 to 2009 world economic crisis, which brought down oil prices. Western sanctions imposed in early 2014 after Russia's annexation of Crimea, and military intervention in eastern Ukraine, with GDP falling 3.7% in 2015. Putin has earned very high levels of domestic and foreign approval throughout his career. In 2007, he was named Person of the Year by Time magazine. In 2015, he was placed at number 1 on Time magazine's list of most influential people. In 2013, 2014, and 2015, he was ranked 1 on the list of most influential people in the world according to Forbes. Putin's early life and education. Putin was born on October 7, 1952, in Leningrad, Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, Soviet Union, now St. Petersburg, Russian Federation. Putin's parents were Vladimir Spiridonovich Putin (1911–1999) and Maria Ivanovna Putina, née Shelemova (1911–1998). His 2 older brothers, Victor and Albert, were born in the mid-1930s. Albert died in infancy, and Victor died of diphtheria during the siege of Leningrad in World War II. Putin's mother was a factory worker, and his father was a draftsman in the Soviet Navy, serving in the submarine fleet in the early 1930s. At the beginning of World War II, Putin's father served in the NKVD destroyer battalion. Later, Putin's father was transferred to the regular army and was injured in 1942. On September 1, 1960, Putin entered school number 193 in Baskov Alley, near his house. Putin was one of several students in a class of 45 students who were not pioneers. At the age of 12, Putin began practicing Sambo and Judo. Putin aspires to be the character of an intelligence officer as shown on Soviet big screens. Putin studied German at St. Petersburg 281 High School, and can speak German. Putin studied law at St. Petersburg State University in 1970, and graduated in 1975. Putin's thesis was entitled The Most Preferred Trade Principles of Countries in International Law. At that time, Putin was recruited to join the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and remained a member until December 1991. Putin met Anatoly Sobchak, an assistant professor who teaches Kozyestvennoe Pravo business law, and influenced Putin's career. In 1997, he received a doctorate in economics aka candidate in economics in Russia at the Mining University of St. Petersburg for a thesis on strategic planning of the mineral economy. In 1975, Putin joined the KGB, and was trained at the 401st KGB School, Okhta, Leningrad now St. Petersburg. After school, Putin worked at the head of the 2nd Counterintelligence Directorate, before he was transferred to the head of the 1st Directorate, where he monitored foreigners and consular officials in Leningrad. From 1985 to 1990, Putin served in Dresden, East Germany, using a pseudonym as a translator. According to Putin's official biography, during the destruction of the Berlin Wall, which began on November 9, 1989, he burned KGB files to prevent protesters from taking them. After the collapse of the Communist East German government, Putin returned to Leningrad, where in June 1991 he worked in the International Affairs section of Leningrad State University, providing news to Deputy Chancellor Yuri Molchanov. There, Putin was assigned to recruit new KGB members, monitor student body, and renewed his friendship with his former professor, Anatoly Sobchak, mayor of Leningrad. Putin resigned with the rank of lieutenant colonel on August 20, 1991, on the second day of the KGB-backed offensive against Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. Putin said, "When the coup began, I decided to be by my side," although he also stated that the choice was difficult because he lived the best part of his life with the members of the body. In 1999, Putin called communism a blind bunch, far from mainstream society. In May 1990, Putin was appointed advisor on international affairs to the mayor of Sobchak. On June 28, 1991, he became the Foreign Affairs Committee of the St. Petersburg City Hall, with the task of promoting international relations and foreign investment and registering business ventures. For a year, Putin was investigated by the city's Legislative Council headed by Marina Saley. They suspect that he set prices and allowed $93 million worth of metal exports in exchange for food aid from abroad which never arrived. Although investigators demanded that Putin be fired, Putin remained head of the Foreign Affairs Committee until 1996. From 1994 to 1996, he held several other political and government posts in St. Petersburg. In March 1994, Putin was appointed first deputy chairman of the St. Petersburg government. In May 1995, he formed the St. Petersburg branch of the pro-government We Are Russia Homeland Political Party, a liberal forces party founded by Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin. In the summer and fall of 1995, he managed the legislative election campaign for the party, and from 1995 to June 1997, he was the leader of its St. Petersburg branch. In 1996, Sobchak lost his chance to be re-elected in St. Petersburg. Putin was summoned to Moscow and in June 1996 became deputy chairman of the Presidential Property Management Department headed by Pavel Borodin. He held that position until March 1997. During his tenure, White was in charge of managing the foreign property of the country and carrying out the transfer of old assets of the Soviet Union and the Communist Party to the Russian Federation. On March 26, 1997, President Boris Yeltsin appointed Putin deputy chairman of the presidential staff, a position he held until May 1998, and head of the main control directorate of the Presidential Property Management Department until June 1998. His predecessor to the post was Alexei Kudrin and his successor was Nikolai Patrushev, both of whom were influential politicians in the future and Putin's contemporaries. On June 27, 1997, at the St. Petersburg Mining Institute, hosted by the rector Vladimir Litvinenko, Putin presented his candidate science dissertation in economics, entitled Strategic Planning of Regional Resources under the Formation of Market Relations. The dissertation describes the habit of young people in Russia to write a scholarly work mid-career in Russia. When Putin later became president, the lecture was the target of plagiarism charges by the Brookings Institution. Although the dissertation has references, Brookings members stated that the dissertation contained unintentional plagiarism. The dissertation committee has denied the charges. On May 25, 1998, Putin was appointed the first deputy head of the presidential staff for the cantons, replacing Victoria Mitina, and on July 15, was appointed head of the Commission for the Preparation of Approvals on the Delimitation of Federal and Regional Powers to the President, replacing Sergei Shakray. After Putin was sworn in, the commission did not finalize any such agreements, although during Shakray's tenure as head of the commission, 46 agreements were signed. Later, after becoming president, Putin postponed all of them. On July 25, 1998, Yeltsin appointed Putin as director of the FSB Federal Security Service, the main intelligence and security agency of the Russian Federation, and as the successor to the KGB. On August 9, 1999, Vladimir Putin was appointed one of the three deputy prime ministers, and later that day was appointed acting prime minister of the government of the Russian Federation by President Yeltsin. Yeltsin also announced that he would like to see White become his successor. Still on the same day, Putin agreed to run for the presidency. On August 16, two states declared his inauguration as prime minister with 233 votes in favor of 84 against, 17 abstentions, making him the fifth Russian prime minister in less than 18 months. At his inauguration, some considered Putin, who remains unknown to the general public, to have served longer than his predecessors. He was initially considered a loyalist of Yeltsin. Like other prime ministers of Boris Yeltsin, Putin did not choose his own ministers, his cabinet was determined by the presidential government. Yeltsin's main opponents and future successors are ready to campaign to replace the existing president, and they are fighting hard to prevent Putin from becoming a potential successor. The image of Putin's law and order and his decision not to deal with the Second Chechen War added to Putin's fame and allowed him to beat all his rivals. Although not officially associated with any party, Putin cast his support for the newly formed Bersatu Party, which won the second-largest percentage of the popular vote of 23.3% in the December 1999 Duma elections, and led the party to support him. On December 31, 1999, Yeltsin abruptly resigned and, according to the Russian constitution, Putin became acting president of the Russian Federation. During his tenure, Putin made previously scheduled visits to Russian troops in Chechnya. The first presidential decree that Putin signed, on December 31, 1999, was entitled On Guarantees for the Former President of the Russian Federation and His Family Members. The decree stated that allegations of corruption against the newly resigned president and his relatives were ignored. The case mainly highlights the Mabitex bribery case in which the Yeltsin family was involved. On August 30, 2000, a criminal investigation number 18/238278-95 was revealed in which Putin himself was one of the defendants, being a member of the municipal government of St. Petersburg. On December 30, another case against the Attorney General was dismissed due to lack of evidence, in addition to the thousands of documents submitted by Swiss prosecutors. Then, on February 12, 2001, Putin signed a similar federal law that superseded the 1999 decree. From 1992 it was reopened by Marina Sali, but she was silenced and forced to leave St. Petersburg. Although her rivals were preparing for an election in June 2000, Yeltsin's resignation made the presidential election held for months. On March 26, 2000, Putin won the first round with 53% voice. The inauguration of President Vladimir Putin was held on May 7, 2000. Putin was appointed the Minister of Finance, Mikhail Kazyanov, as Prime Minister. Putin's first major fame came in August 2000, when he criticized the mishandling of the Kursk submarine disaster. The criticism was in large part because the incident took place a few days before Putin returned from vacation, and some time before he visited the crime scene. Between 2000 and 2004, Putin planned to reconstruct the deteriorating conditions that made up the country, winning the power struggle with the Russian oligarchs, making the biggest bid for the country. The offer gives the oligarchs the privilege of putting most of their power in exchange for their particular support for alliances with Putin's government. A new group of entrepreneurs was formed, consisting of Gennady Timchenko, Vladimir Yakunin, Yuri Kovalchuk, Sergei Chemezov, with close personal ties to Putin. A few months before the election, Putin assembled the cabinet of Prime Minister Kazyanov, and appointed Mikhail Fradkov to fill his place. Sergei Ivanov became the first civilian in Russia to be appointed to the post of Minister of Defense. In 2003, a referendum was held in Chechnya, adopting a new constitution declaring that the Chechen Republic was a part of Russia. In addition, the region was designated as autonomous. Chechnya was gradually stabilized by holding parliamentary elections and the establishment of a regional government. Throughout the war, Russia was confronted by the onslaught of the Chechen rebel movement. However, minor offensives by the rebels still took place throughout the northern Caucasus. On March 14, 2004, Putin was elected president for a second term, winning 71% of the vote. The Beslan school hostage crisis occurred in September 2004, in which hundreds of people died. Some Russian press and international media warned that the deaths of 130 hostages in a special forces rescue operation in the 2002 Moscow theater hostage crisis could damage Putin's fame. However, shortly after the siege ended, the Russian president earned a record public admiration rating, with 83% of Russians expressing admiration for Putin and his handling of the siege. In 2005, the National Priority Project was launched to influence healthcare, education, housing and agriculture in Russia. The ongoing criminal trial of Russia's richest man at the time, Yukos company president Mikhail Khodorkovsky, on charges of tax fraud and evasion was highlighted by the international press as a retaliation for Khodorkovsky's contributions to liberal and communist opponents in the Kremlin. The government said that Khodorkovsky damaged most of the Duma by changing the tax code. Khodorkovsky was arrested, Yukos went bankrupt and the company's assets were auctioned at below market values, with the largest share being acquired by the state company Rosneft. Yukos' fate is seen as a sign of Russia's transition to a state capitalist system. The case was resolved in July 2014 when Yukos shareholders awarded $50 billion in compensation by the Permanent Board of Arbitration in The Hague. On October 7, 2006, Anna Politkovskaya, a journalist highlighting corruption in the Russian army and its impact on Chechnya, was shot in her apartment room on Putin's birthday. Politkovskaya's death drew international criticism, accusing Putin of failing to protect the country's new independent media. Putin himself said that his death caused the government more trouble than his writings. In 2007, the March of Dissidents was organized by the other Russian opposition group, led by former chess champion Garry Kasparov and National Bolsheviks leader Eduard Limonov. After earlier warnings, demonstrations in several Russian cities were met with police crackdown, which included restricting the movement of protesters and the arrest of about 150 people trying to cross police lines. On September 12, 2007, Putin dissolved the government at the request of Prime Minister Mikhail Fradkov. Fradkov stated that the move was done to give the president a free hand in running parliamentary elections. Viktor Zubkov is sworn in as the new prime minister. In December 2007, United Russia won 64.24% of the popular vote in their march to the State Duma according to the results of the preliminary elections. United Russia's victory in the December 2007 elections was seen by some as a sign of strong support from the then Russian leader and his policies. Putin was given a third term by the constitution. First Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev was elected as his successor. In a power transfer operation on May 8, 2008, just a day after handing over the presidency to Medvedev, Putin was sworn in as Prime Minister of Russia, putting his political dominance first. Another achievement was in stabilizing Russia's population size between 2008 to 2011 after a long-term demographic slump that began in the 1990s. At the United Russia Congress in Moscow on September 24, 2011, Medvedev formally planned for Putin to run for president in 2012, as Putin accepted. Given United Russia's near-unanimous dominance in Russian politics, some observers believe that Putin will hold a third term. The move was made by Medvedev so he can use his United Russia ticket in parliamentary elections in December, with the aim of becoming prime minister at the end of his term as president. After the parliamentary elections on December 4, 2011, tens of thousands of Russians demonstrated against allegations of electoral fraud, the largest demonstration of the Putin administration. The protesters criticized Putin and united Russia and demanded the retraction of the election results. The protesters stoked fears of a colorful revolution in society. Putin formed a number of paramilitary groups loyal to himself and to the United Russia Party in the period between 2005 and 2012. On March 4, 2012, Putin won the 2012 Russian presidential election in the first round, with 63.6% of the vote. Despite allegations of inflating the vote, opposition groups accused Putin and the United Russia Party of fraud. The polling station, the turnout was criticized by the Russian opposition and by international observers from the Organization of European Security and Cooperation for its unusual procedure. Anti-Putin rallies were held during and directly after the presidential campaign. The most famous demonstration was the appearance of Pussy Riot on February 21, which was later put on trial. Approximately 8,000 to 20,000 protesters gathered in Moscow on May 6, where 80 people were injured in clashes with police, and 450 people were arrested, with 120 others arrested the next day. A backlash from Putin's supporters took place at a gathering of about 130,000 supporters at the Luzhniki Stadium, Russia's largest stadium. Some in the audience said they were paid to come, forced to come by their employees, or thought the event was a folk festival. The event is considered Putin's biggest endorsement to date. Putin won the 2018 presidential election with more than 76% of the vote. His fourth term begins on May 7, 2018, which will last until 2024. On the same day, Putin invited Dmitry Medvedev to form a new government. On May 15, 2018, Putin took part in the opening of the movement along the Crimean Bridge highway section. May 2018, Putin signed a decree on the composition of the new government. On May 25, 2018, Putin announced that he would not run for president in 2024, confirming this in accordance with the Russian constitution. On June 14, 2018, Putin opened the 21st FIFA World Cup, which took place in Russia for the first time. On January 15, 2020, Dmitry Medvedev and his entire government resigned after Vladimir Putin's speech to the Federal Assembly. Putin suggested major constitutional amendments that could expand his political powers after becoming president. At the same time, on behalf of Putin, he continued to exercise his power until the formation of a new government. The president suggested that Medvedev take over as deputy chairman of the newly formed Security Council. On the same day, Putin nominated Mikhail Mishustin, head of the country's Federal Tax Service, for the post of prime minister. The next day, he was confirmed by the State Duma to the post and appointed prime minister by Putin's decree. On January 21, 2020, Mishustin presented Vladimir Putin with a draft of the structure of his cabinet. On the same day, the president signed a decree on the composition of the cabinet and appointed the names of ministerial candidates. Sergei Guriev, when talking about Putin's economic policies, divides them into four distinct periods: the years of reform from his first term from 1999 to 2003, the statistical year from his second term of office 2004 to the first half of 2008, the crisis and recovery of the world economy the second half of 2008 to 2013, and the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia's increasing isolation from the global economy, and the stagnation of 2014 to the present. Fueled by the commodity boom of the 2000s, including record-high oil prices, under the Putin administration from 2000 to 2016, there was a 4.5-fold increase in US dollar revenues. During Putin's first 8 years in office, the industry grew substantially, such as well as production, construction, real income, credit, and the middle class. A fund for oil revenues allowed Russia to repay all debts of the Soviet Union in 2005. Russia joined the World Trade Organization on August 22, 2012. In 2014, Putin signed a deal to supply China with 38 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year. Power of Siberia, which Putin calls the world's largest construction project, launched in 2019 and is expected to continue for 30 years with a final cost to China of $400 billion. As Russian journalists noted after the 2018 presidential inauguration, Putin since 2007 has repeatedly predicted that Russia will become one of the world's fifth largest economies in about 10 years from that date. So far this target has not been achieved. Environmental policy. In 2004, President Putin signed the Kyoto Protocol agreement designed to reduce greenhouse gases. However, Russia does not face mandatory cuts, as the Kyoto Protocol limits emissions to a percentage increase or decrease from 1990 levels, and Russia's greenhouse gas emissions fall well below the 1990 baseline due to the decline in economic output following the breakup of the Soviet Union. Putin personally oversees a number of protection programs for rare and endangered animals in Russia, such as the Amur tiger, white whale, polar bear and snow leopard. Buddhism, Eastern Orthodox Christianity, Islam and Judaism received state support during the Putin era. Major construction and restoration of the church began in the 1990s, continued under Putin, and the state allowed religious teaching in schools, giving parents the option for their children to learn the basics of either traditional religion or secular ethics. His approach to religious policy has been characterized as one of support for religious freedom, but also as an attempt to unite various religions under state authority. In 2012, Putin was honored in Bethlehem and a street was named after him. Putin regularly attends the most important services of the Russian Orthodox Church on major Orthodox Christian holidays. He had good relations with the Patriarch of the Russian Church, the late Alexei II of Moscow and Kirill of the present Moscow. As president, he took an active personal part in promoting the law on canonical communion with the Moscow Patriarchate, signed on May 17, 2007, which restored relations between the Moscow-based Russian Orthodox Church and the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia after 80 years of division. Putin explicitly promotes conservative policies on social, cultural and political issues, both at home and abroad. Putin has attacked globalism and neoliberalism and is identified by experts with Russian conservatism. Putin has promoted a new think tank that brings together like-minded intellectuals and writers. For example, the Izborsky Club, founded in 2012 by the conservative right-wing journalist Alexander Prokhanov, emphasizes 1. Russian nationalism, 2. restorations of the greatness of Russian history, and 3. systematic opposition to liberal ideas and policies. Vladislav Surkov, a senior government official, has been one of the chief economic consultants during Putin's presidency. On cultural and social matters, Putin has worked closely with the Russian Orthodox Church. Patriarch Kirill of Moscow, head of the church, backed his election in 2012 by declaring Putin's term like a miracle of God. Stephen Myers reports, the church, once deeply depressed, has emerged from the Soviet collapse as one of the most revered institutions. Now Cyril leads the faithful directly into alliance with the state. In 2007, Putin led successful efforts on behalf of Sochi for the 2014 Winter Olympics and 2014 Winter Paralympics, the first Winter Olympics ever hosted by Russia. Similarly, in 2008, the city of Kazan won the bid for the 2013 Summer Universiade, and on December 2, 2010 Russia won the right to host the 2017 FIFA Confederations Cup and 2018 FIFA World Cup, also for the first time in Russian history. In 2013, Putin stated that gay athletes would not face any discrimination at the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics. In 2012, Putin wrote an article in the Hindu newspaper, saying that the declaration of strategic partnership between India and Russia signed in October 2000 was a truly historic step. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh during Putin's 2012 visit to India. President Putin is a friend India's prized and original architect of the India-Russia strategic partnership. Putin's Russia maintains positive relations with other BRIC countries. The country has sought to strengthen relations especially with the People's Republic of China by signing the Treaty of Friendship as well as building the Trans-Siberian Oil Pipeline and the Trans-Siberian Gas Pipeline directed at China's growing energy needs. Mutual security cooperation between the two countries and their Central Asian neighbors is facilitated by the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, founded in 2001 in Shanghai by the leaders of China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, after the September 9 attacks on the U.S. in 2001. Putin had good relations with American President George W. Bush and many Western European leaders. Her colder and more business-like relationship with the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, is often associated with Merkel's upbringing in former East Germany, where Putin was stationed as a KGB agent. She had a very friendly and warm relationship with former Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, both leaders. It has often described their relationship as a close friendship, continuing to hold bilateral meetings even after Berlusconi's resignation in November 2011. In late 2013, Russian-American relations took a turn for the worse when the United States canceled a summit for the first time since 1960, after Putin granted asylum to America's Edward Snowden, who had leaked large amounts of classified information from the NSA. In 2014, Russia was suspended from the G8 group as a result of its annexation of Crimea. However, in June 2015, Putin announced that Russia had no intention of attacking NATO. With the election of Donald Trump, the liking for Putin in the US has increased. A Gallup poll in February 2017 revealed a positive view of Putin among 22% of Americans, the highest since 2003. However, Putin has stated that US-Russian relations, already at their lowest level since the end of the Cold War, continued to deteriorate after Trump took office in January 2017. In 2003, relations between Russia and Britain deteriorated when Britain granted political asylum to Putin's former patron, oligarch Boris Berezovsky. This slump was exacerbated by allegations that Britain spied on and made secret payments to pro-democracy and human rights groups. According to a June 2007 public opinion survey, Putin's approval rating was 81%, the second highest of any leader in the world that year. In January 2013, during the 2011 to 2013 Russia protests, Putin's approval rating fell to 62%, the lowest figure since 2000 and a 10-point drop over 2 years. In May 2014, following the 2014 Ukrainian Revolution and the annexation of Crimea, Putin's approval rating had recovered to 85.9%, the highest in 6 years. Following EU and US sanctions against Russian officials as a result of the 2014 pro-Russian unrest in Ukraine, Putin's approval rating stood at 87%, according to a Levada Center survey published on August 6, 2014. Ranking of the most popular politicians in the world, Putin cultivated a public image as an outdoor tough guy, sporty and macho, demonstrating his physical prowess by taking part in unusual or dangerous activities, such as extreme sports and interactions with wild animals, part of a public relations approach that Wired said was intentional. Growing macho, taking over the superhero image. For example, in 2007, the tabloid Komsomolskaya Pravda published a large, shirtless photo of Putin vacationing in the Siberian mountains with the caption, "Be like Putin." Some activities were criticized for being staged. Outside of Russia, his macho image has become the subject of parody. There are many songs about Putin. Putin's name and image are widely used in advertising and product branding. Among Putin's branded products are vodka Putinka, canned food brand Putin, Gorbusha Putaina caviar, and a collection of t-shirts with his image on it. In 2015, his advisor was found dead after days of excessive alcohol consumption, even though it was later declared an accident. On July 28, 1983, Putin married Lyudmila Shkrebneva, and they lived together in Germany from 1985 to 1990. They have 2 daughters, Maria Putaina, who was born on April 28, 1985 in St. Petersburg, Russia, and Yekaterina Putaina, who was born on August 31, 1986 in Dresden, East Germany. On June 6, 2013, Putin announced that their marriage was ending, and on April 1, 2014, the Kremlin confirmed that their relationship had ended. Figures released during the 2007 legislative elections state that Putin's wealth amounts to about 3.7 million rubles, $150,000, on record. A bank, a 774 SQM 8,330 square foot private apartment in St. Petersburg, and miscellaneous other assets. Putin's 2006 earnings are reported to be 2 million rubles, about $80,000. In 2012, Putin reported earnings of 3.6 million rubles, $113,000. According to Russian opposition politicians and journalists, Putin is secretly keeping billions in wealth, through holdings in a number of Russian companies. Pet. Putin has 5 dogs that were given to him from various leaders of the nation: Connie, Buffy, Yum, Vernie and Pasha. Connie died in 2014. It is not known what happened to the 2 previous poodles of the Putin family, Tosia and Rodeo. Putin is a Russian Orthodox Christian. His mother was a devout Christian who attended the services of the Russian Orthodox Church, while his father was an atheist. Although her mother did not keep the icon at home, she attended church regularly, despite the Soviet government's persecution of her religion at the time. His mother secretly baptized him as a baby, and he regularly took him to services. According to Putin, his religious awakening began after he was involved in a serious car accident involving his wife in 1993, and a life-threatening fire that burned their dacha in August 1996. Shortly before an official visit to Israel, Putin's mother gave him a baptismal cross necklace, and told him to bless her. Putin stated, "I did as he said and then put a cross around my neck. I've never taken it off since then." When asked in 2007 if he believed in God, he replied, "There are things I believe in, which should not be in my position, at least, to be shared with the public at large for everyone's consumption because it would look like an advertisement in itself or a political striptease." Confessor Putin is said to be Russian Orthodox Bishop Tikhon Shevchenov. Putin is often seen promoting sports including skiing, badminton, cycling and fishing and a healthy lifestyle among Russians. Putin watches football and supports FC Zenit St. Petersburg. He has interests in ice hockey and bandy. Putin trained in judo since he was 11 years old, before switching to sambo at the age of 14. He won competitions in both sports in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. He was awarded the 8th dan of a black belt in 2012, becoming the first Russian to achieve that status. Putin also practices karate.
Well, that's a glimpse of the story, hopefully add insight, motivation, inspiration, and increase intelligence. Don't forget to watch the next interesting story. Thank you very much for watching.